In this episode, we're discussing truth and what it means to come back to your truth. My guest, Kendra Woods, shares her journey of reconnecting with her truth, finding her voice, and moving into soulful entrepreneurship. Hello, and welcome to the Beautiful Reflections podcast. I'm your host, Katherine Johnson, a certified professional coach, mentor, writer, and speaker. I help professional women gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to pursue their bigger purpose and vision so that they can have fulfillment and thrive in their careers. I believe there is beauty in our voices, beauty in our stories, and beauty in our journeys. There is power in community, connection, and deep, meaningful conversation, which is why me and my guests are here to share our stories, experiences, lessons, and learning to inspire you as you walk the path and step into your next level. We go deep, sharing beautiful reflections of what this personal growth journey looks like in real, living color. This journey of pursuing our purpose and vision as we continue to evolve. It is my mission to empower you to believe in your power, to embrace your own uniqueness, and to be the best version of you. I want to see you thrive purposefully. Now on to the episode for today. Welcome to the Beautiful Reflections podcast. I'm your host, Katherine Johnson. Today's episode is about coming back to your truth. What does truth mean? What does this journey back to self really entail? How does one begin the process of finding themselves or reconnecting with the truth of who they are? I've invited my guest, Kendra Woods, to have a conversation about this and share her pearls of wisdom. I've known Kendra for a few years now, and she has supported me immensely on my own personal growth journey. Kendra Woods is the founder of Soulful Success by Design, where she guides ambitious, high-achieving, heart-centered coaches, leaders, healers, and service providers towards authentic alignment in business and life through human design. She works with women who are driven by purpose and ready to take their business and life to the next level. Through her passionate work, she is able to help women achieve a new reality for themselves through human design coaching, online group programs, and private coaching experiences. Take a listen as Kendra and I dive deep into what it means to come back to your truth. Hello, Kendra. Welcome to the Beautiful Reflections podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I am so happy to have you here today and super excited to dig deep in this conversation that we're having today, really about awakening to the truth of who you really are. And I thought this was just fitting because I know you, I know your story, and we've worked together in the past. And I thought this would be a good conversation to have for those who may really be looking to really reconnect with themselves at a deeper level.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I can't wait to talk.
So this truth part, though, like when we say reconnect with the truth of who you are, let's really clarify like the truth part of it. What are we talking about when we say reconnect with the truth?
So the way that I look at that is reconnecting with, here's how I would explain this. There was a part of you when you were a young girl, right, who was adventurous, carefree, curious, had all these amazing ideas. Your imagination was just like wild. That part of you, because what happens as we get older is we pick up beliefs, we pick up conditioning, we pick up, how we think we're supposed to be in order to be accepted in society, in order to be accepted in our family, in order to be accepted in our careers. And so we create kind of like this facade of who we really are. And so when I say like connecting back to the truth, it's connecting back to that part of you that you were before somebody else told you you couldn't be that, or before somebody else told you you shouldn't be like that, or you shouldn't show up like that. So it's getting back to like your true essence, what makes you you.
Yes, and I can definitely resonate with that just on my journey, just recognizing that it's been a big part of my personal growth and where I am today, really getting clear about who I am, my voice, and how I want to show up and the person that I'm choosing to be every day. But tell us about where this, why truth for you? Like, where did it start for you on your journey? This notion to really come back to you and yourself.
Yeah. So for me, it started, I was probably around the age of like 35. And I was working in corporate as a healthcare executive. And I realized I had this moment where I was like, okay, I've done all the things. I checked off all the boxes. I went to college and got my undergrad degree. I then got my master's degree in healthcare. Then I started working in healthcare. I had met my husband by then, and we had gotten married, of course. And then I had a daughter and I had a house. Like did all the things that they say you're supposed to do, the things that you're supposed to accomplish in life. And I still found myself looking at all of this, being grateful, of course, but also being like, okay, this cannot be it. Like, I just feel like there was something inside of me that was just like, no, there's more than this. There's more than this. There's more than this. And so I found myself working in a position in healthcare and really not loving it, and really becoming honest with myself that I didn't love it, right? I didn't like it. I wasn't happy with it. And so for me, getting to that point of being honest with myself that I didn't really like where I was at was a defining moment, because as soon as I made that declaration, or that awareness came about that I really wasn't happy with what I was doing, then I became aware of other things. Other things started coming up into my field of awareness that I hadn't noticed before. For example, like I noticed myself playing small, not really knowing what my voice was. You mentioned earlier that your journey was about finding your voice. I didn't know my voice. And that was a hard thing, because I didn't really know how to communicate to others my desires or my needs. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. And so that was a defining moment for me around that age, and working at that job that I just did not like and was kind of soul sucking, if you ask me.
And I think so many women can relate with that, really being in a place, whether it's in their careers, maybe in a relationship, or even with business, like really getting to the place where you're just recognizing and becoming aware that, you're not happy, there's more, you don't like it, and really wanting to really figure out what the next thing is. What is the more? What is really causing the feeling that you're feeling every day as you're sitting in the office, knowing that this is not it.
Yeah, exactly. And it can feel a little uncomfortable. And to be honest, I had a lot of fear that came up around that, because that was all I knew. It's like when that's all you know, and then all of a sudden you get this nudge that says, oh, but there's more. And oh, but, what about this or what about that? Fear comes up, because then I was thinking, well, how do I take that leap? How do I even decide to do something different when all I know is this? What's going to happen? How am I going to take care of my family? Like all the questions start coming up. So for me at that point, I became aware of it, but I still stayed in the situation because I was afraid, and also because I didn't know what other options were. I didn't know what that could look like. I'd always felt like I wanted to be my own boss one day, but the idea of starting my business at that point where I had no clue. I was like, I don't know what that looks like, or how do I even do that? And what are the steps? And so instead of exploring that initially, I just stayed in that space and just continued to be unhappy, depressed and anxious. Like all the physical manifestations of me being unhappy started to show themselves. And I mean, when that happens, it's like, that's going to get your attention. When your body starts giving you the signs and the signals, and you're not able to be as productive, and you're not feeling as, the vitality anymore, it's like you're forced to stop,
Yeah, your body has a way of making you listen, whether you want to or not. Like it's going to give you the signs, and it's up to you to pay attention, because it's trying to tell you, like, listen here, like the speed that you're going at, what you're dealing with, like, I don't like it. And I'm giving you warning signs to let you know.
Exactly. And I was getting lots of warning signs.
Yeah. So let's talk about this fear. Of course, like you're in this space now where you recognize you have this awareness, and naturally fear comes up. You've been in this career for a long time. At one point you enjoyed it and you went into it with, your intentions and your goals, but then you reach this place and now all of your fears are there to greet you, right? To welcome you, like, hello, what are you going to do with me? Like you're thinking about leaving, thinking about doing something different, but what are you going to do with all these fears that you're having about what you can do, what's next, and what it could look like? So you reach this place and the fears are really, challenging you and knocking at your door, and they're in your head. What do you do now? What do you do with all this fear?
Oh, gosh. Well, now where I'm at, I understand that we need to process this fear. Back then, I don't think I was giving myself space to process at first. And I think that's where a lot of the physical symptoms started to show up, right? Anxiety, depression. I was like 20 pounds heavier than I am now. Just all those things, I was like suppressing it. So when we suppress our emotions, it manifests in a physical way, right? So one of the things that I had to start doing is I was in my closet one day. I had like my sacred space in my walk-in closet back then. And so I was in there praying one day and I was just, praying out loud and whatnot. And it hit me. I saw myself. It was like, I got the message that nobody else would be able to shift my thoughts or change my thinking or change the way that I was feeling or change my situation unless I decided. And so then what came up from that then was, oh, wait a minute. It's because of the way I'm thinking. I was just staying in that fear loop and thinking about, well, what if this and what if that and what if that happens and what if this happens and what if I don't make it or what if this and that. And so instead of staying in that fear loop, I had this light bulb moment where I was like, wait a minute, I get to choose my thoughts. What would happen if I shifted the way that I was thinking, right? Would that help me feel a little bit different inside? And so it was through that process that I then decided that I was going to do what I called then my morning manifestation routine, where I would get up before work and I would get up at crazy hours. Like it was like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I would get up and because that was the time that was quiet in my house. My husband was still asleep. My daughter was still asleep. And I would read, I would meditate, I would journal, I would visualize, and I would really get clear on what are some thoughts that are going to support me, like writing affirmations, Mm-hmm. And that, till this day, that was the thing that really helped me to shift that energy, because fear is just energy in our body, like everything. Fear, excitement, it's just energy. It's a matter of how do you then work with that energy. So the way that I found to work with it was to do those things to help me turn that energy into something that could support me during my day, to think better thoughts. And as I did that, I noticed that I was feeling better. And it was also through that too, that then as I was feeling better, things were beginning to show up that could support me. So do you want me to share a story? Can I share a story real quick?
Oh, yes. Share a story.
So there was like a line in the sand moment where I was at work and I was, again, a healthcare executive. So I managed medical offices, and every morning I did what we called rounds. So I would go to all of my different medical offices and I would, check on my doctors, check on my staff. And there was one morning I went down into my largest medical office and I had the most horrifying panic attack in front of my doctors, in front of my staff. I ended up on an exam table, like with my head, like, how they tell you to put your head above your heart, however they do it. Mm-hmm. They had me like tilted weird. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. And so it was in that moment, at the end of that, my husband had to come get me, took me home. I was laid up in bed for 2 days because my body was just so exhausted and so depleted. I could not move. But it was in that moment where, again, I was like, okay, I've got to take this a step further. Something has to shift. And in that moment of decision making in the middle of the night, I came across these different things that you could do online, right? I came across a woman that talked about building your business online. That was my answer, right? So when I was in fear, I couldn't see the answer. It was all about what if this and what if that? And I don't know. And I'm scared and I'm afraid. But the moment I kind of surrendered, and my body made me surrender. So we can choose to surrender, which is what I would choose to do now, or we can let our body make us surrender. And my body made me surrender. And in that moment of surrender is when, like, boom, there's your answer. Mm. So, yeah, that was a defining moment.
So much in that, so much to really unpack and so much to really digest. I love what you mentioned about really, you had to really understand how you were thinking about the situation, understand what your thoughts were. And then you had to start to do some work to shift those thoughts so that you can be in a new space. And then you have this major aha moment, this major defining moment that puts it all into perspective. Like, look, here's the answer that you're seeking. Here's what you're looking for. And here's what's going to support you next. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So when you think about like why you stayed, or, what kept you in that career, or what maybe could have contributed to some of the fears that you have, what do you think were some of the factors that really were going through your mind, and really were some of the things that kind of contributed to why you were still staying, or why you were deciding to still be there?
That is a great question. So I think a big part of it was A big part of it was conditioning because, like I said, like that was just what I knew. It was, I grew up and it was like, you go to college and you get a job and you stay at that job until you retire and then you leave. So the fact that I was having this different idea about what I wanted, it was like, oh, wait a minute. Like, this is like, are we sure we can do it? I'm not that kind of person. Like, that's for other people. There was also some unworthiness that was in there where I didn't feel worthy enough to actually take a thought or an idea or an inspiration that I had and actually walk it out. It was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I've got to do this. Not knowing, like fear of uncertainty. And I think that holds a lot of us back. Life is uncertain, period. I mean, we try to bring certain certainties into our life, but really life is very uncertain. And so I think that I didn't really trust myself fully back then to dive into the uncertainty, to know that, okay, I can actually take this leap or I could explore something new and I'll be okay. I didn't truly believe back then that I would be okay if I took that leap. It literally felt life-threatening because it was a matter of, well, if I do this and I'm have a good job, I'm getting paid good money, who am I to go out here and then say I want to do something different? And if I do this, then what about the money? Right? So all these, so those were the fears. It was survival. That's what I would say. It was this whole like being stuck in survival and willing to just go through the stuff that didn't feel good, willing to go through and walk through the mud, even though I didn't like it, because there was a part of me that was comfortable with it, even though it didn't feel good. So yeah. And trust is going to be a big factor in that too. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust that I could actually do it. I just didn't trust, period.
I think many people can relate with, being in the whole survival mode and also really knowing that they really thrive on certainty. Like we want all the answers. We want to know how it's all going to work out. We want to see the big picture. And then on the other side, it's your rational and logical mind where now you're starting to starting to have all these questions like, okay, does this even make sense? Like, what am I doing? Why am I feeling this way? What does it all mean? So you're really battling with all those different things. And you come to this place where you recognize that, you know what? I'm going to have to trust myself in this. I'm going to have to trust myself in this decision. I'm going to have to trust that these desires that are in me are there for a reason. And I'm going to have to move from this space and really move from this empowered place of really beginning to trust myself. So you're at this place and you talked about like some of the things that you were already doing. You were doing some journaling, you were doing some meditation, but let's dig deep into this process of really trusting yourself. Cause I know it's not something, it's something that we say, but it's not something that, happens overnight. It's something that requires a lot of work. And it's something that we're always really working through because we're always really working to continue to elevate, to continue to grow, to continue to really be our best self. But when it comes to really trusting ourselves and we're looking to really dig deeper into uncovering what that can mean for us, like where do we start? Where do we even begin with that process?
So here's the thing with building self-trust is you actually have to face the fear. You have to give yourself permission to feel the fear, to face it, and to still take the step, right? So my first act of really trusting myself came when did it? So there was a coach that I found through a book, and she was having a event in Atlanta, and my family lives in Atlanta. So I thought, okay, well, I can just visit my family and I could go to this event, right? And learn about what she's talking about, this whole world of online business was about. And so I went to the event, really got clear on the fact that, oh my gosh, this is exactly where I need to be. This is what I get to do. And she was promoting a mastermind at the time. And it was a good 5-figure investment. So that was scary in and of itself. I was like, oh my gosh, I have never spent that much money before on anything personal development. Now, mind you, I spent tons of money on traditional education, bachelor's degree, master's degree. But this was different. This was actually investing in myself in a way to where I was going to develop myself more and launch a business. And taking that step to do that required me to feel afraid, but to have enough faith that if I do this, it's going to it's going to expose me to something that I've never been exposed before. So I didn't know what was going to happen after I paid that investment. I didn't know if I was actually going to be able to launch my business. I didn't know what it was going to look like. But I just had to come to terms within myself to say, I'm going to choose in this moment to trust myself enough to take this leap and know that no matter what happens, I'm still going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Even if things completely go downhill, I'm still going to be okay. Because then one of the things too that I remember doing is looking back on my life, like in my early 20s, I was recounting some of the things that I had been through and how I made it through them. And I was like, you know what? Well, if I got through that, then I can also get through something else if it were to come up. So trusting yourself is about choosing to trust yourself and choosing that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. Our decisions are so powerful.
I love that. So it's a choice. It's a choice to really choose, to really trust yourself and to really, begin to cultivate the faith that in yourself and what you can do and what's truly possible for you. And I love that you gave a great gem for the listeners here. And one of the ways you can do that is to really think about all of the things that you've done in your life to date, to really think about your accomplishments, to really think about your successes and use that to fuel you as you're going through this process of really understanding what you can do and what's possible for you and using that to really build that trust factor, the trust that you have in yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. Absolutely. And one of the other things that I did too that I'd love to share, Catherine, is when we talk about investing in ourselves, because one of the things that shifted for me is learning the different ways in which we do that. So like I said, there was no qualms at all about investing in myself when it came to a traditional education. Mm-hmm. No qualms there. But when it came to investing in myself from a personal space, I was like, okay, this feels a little bit different. But one of the things that I sat down and did, remember I said earlier, there was some unworthiness that was kind of within me where I was like, I don't know if I'm worthy of this. Do I deserve this? I'm not sure. And so I sat down and just listed out all the ways that I was of value. What had I put into myself that increased my skills and that through that helped me increase my value as it pertains to me being an employee or me being a business owner? Because I want to make sure this is clear that I'm not saying that investing in yourself makes you more valuable, because you're already valuable. You're already worthy. You're already valuable. It's like, how can you then increase your skill set or add more skills to your toolbox so that you can then demand more from either your clients or from employers and things like that? And so I just got really clear on, okay, how am I already a valuable person? How am I already a valuable woman? What have I already done to show that I've already invested in myself and that I am valuable? And I listed all those things out. What were those things? And it was actually really eye-opening to see that I had already been doing this, but this was just a different way for me to do it. Does that make sense? Yeah,
it does. Now, you're going to have to tell us at least a few things that you came up with when you started to make that list.
Oh, my God.
What was really eye-opening for you? Like, wow, I did that. Kendra Woods, I did that.
Yeah. So, okay. Gosh, it was so long ago.
It's like bragging a little bit too. So
I know.
Brag a little bit.
So, okay. So when I look back, so before I was in healthcare, I was in real estate. Right. And so I did really well in real estate. So recognizing that this was back in like 2006, 2007, 2008, like right before the whole market just, crashed or whatnot. But I look back and I was like, you know what? I sold millions of dollars in real estate, right? With like millions of dollars in real estate and got rewards for it and everything. So look back at that and said, okay, I didn't know a thing about real estate when I first got into it. I had to learn it. I had to study it. And then I had to actually put what I learned into action. So I looked at that and said, okay, well, I did that and I was successful at it. Then I looked at, prior to that, I was in the restaurant industry and I worked my way up. Like I used to wait tables in my early 20s. And that's kind of how I made money as I was going through college. I worked my way up to be a manager of different restaurants. And I was like, there was something there. In those moments, I had to trust that I could actually take on those responsibilities, right? So this was showing me too, that even though I didn't consciously recognize it, but in those moments, as I was, climbing the ladder, I was trusting that I could take on that higher position or that higher responsibility. When I looked at what I had done as far as my schooling, it's like I finished my 4 years. I don't remember what my GPA was, but I had a decent GPA. I did that while working. I did that. It was the same with my master's degree. It's like, okay, I moved from Atlanta to Alabama. I was extremely homesick, but I finished my master's degree and finished it up while still pregnant with my daughter. Finished it right before I had her. And I was like, okay, I did that. So literally all those things, looking at that, I was like, ooh, I did that. I did that. I did that. All the different certifications that I took to help me build up my skills in Excel and different, applications and stuff. Okay, I took time and I did that. So that really helped me to see that, okay, well, I've been doing this all along. This is just another area where I get to invest in myself and figure out what it looks like to grow a business and to stand on my own and to grow myself at the same time. So, and there were some other things that were in there, like I remember relationships, how I moved out of relationships that were toxic for me, that weren't healthy for me, and how I managed to move out of those spaces into ones that were more healthy. So just recounting all of that made me remember, we forget how much we have actually accomplished, how much we have actually done, and what we have moved through. We forget about it. And just going through that simple exercise of just recounting all the ways. And like you said, bragging on yourself a bit and be like, yep, I did that. I did that. I did that. And being proud of it. That right there can really internally kind of boost your self-confidence to say, oh, wait a minute, I forgot. Like, I can do this.
Yes. I love all of this. Love all of this as, a way to really understand by looking at everything that you've done, everything that you can do, and all the potential that really still lies dormant within you as well. Because as you start to go through this list, you're like, man, for you to be a manager, for you to, not know anything about real estate, but then turn around and be able to deliver in the way that you did, all of those things that you did really speak to, the type of person that you were inherently. It sheds a light into all of the different facets of you. And now you get to make a choice to really bring all of these things that you uncovered about yourself. You can make the choice to really bring these things into what you're deciding to transition to or what you're deciding to move into. And I love that you said it was a big part of it was really deciding that you're going to have to make this investment work, right? You had invested, so much in all the other things, but now that you've taken this masterclass and you've got some more knowledge, now it's time to put this investment into action. So what did that look like? Now you're stepping into entrepreneurship, you're stepping into business, and now it's time for you to put it into action. What does that look like at this point?
Yeah, that is a great question. It looks like showing up for yourself. That's how I put it. And so once I had the foundation laid of what it looked like to launch an online business, it was then taking what I had learned and actually implementing it and putting it into action. I think, sometimes we can, and I've done this before too, we can take in all the information, but then we don't actually implement it. You know what I mean? Like we can hear it and we can listen to it. We're like, oh, that sounds great. That sounds nice. But we don't actually do anything with it. So then for me, it looked like, again, making a decision to say, I'm going to show up and do this, and I'm going to take imperfect action. I'm emphasizing imperfect action because it was not pretty. It was not perfect. But I took the action anyways. So what that looked like specifically was I was still working in corporate for a little bit at the time when I started my business. So it was thinking about, okay, well, how can I get the word out there about my business while I'm still working? So what that looked like is literally using any pocket of time that I had to get myself out there. So on my lunch break, I would be doing like a Facebook Live, or I'd be writing a blog post. In the evenings, if I was running like a challenge or something, then that would be when I would show up live to run the challenge. A lot of the things, there were some things that I had to teach myself, right? When it came to like building my website, it was like, all right, I need to figure out, how do I do this? I need to watch some tutorials. So there was a lot of energy that went into it at the very beginning. And it's kind of like, and I love this analogy, like when a plane takes off, it uses most of its fuel during the actual takeoff. That's when it's using a lot of its energy. And so it's the same thing for us. Whenever we're stepping into something new, we're going to use a lot of our energy really getting ourselves off the ground. And so having the mindset that even though you're putting out a lot of energy, knowing that you're doing it to show up for yourself in a way that maybe you never have before. So it may feel uncomfortable. It may feel a little awkward, but it's all for the good. Right. And you can feel good knowing that, okay, like I did my own website. It may not be like the most amazing graphically designed website, but I did that.
Mm-hmm.
I showed up and did Facebook Lives. It may not have been the most perfect, setting and audio and all that, but I showed up and I did that. And so it's just showing up for yourself.
Yeah. I love that. And it comes back to really trusting yourself too, because while you're doing these things, like you're not going to really see immediate results. You may not even get the feedback that you think you should get. You may not even hear anything. It may just be silence. But like you said, it's really about really trusting yourself and trusting the process too. Like, you're stepping into something new. So it is a process, and there's learning that has to be learned. There's action that has to be taken, and all of that, the culmination of all that is really what's going to get you to what's next and where you're desiring to go for your business as an entrepreneur.
Exactly. And that brings you back as you're doing this, as you're trusting yourself, as you're showing up for yourself, you begin to see the truth of who you really are begin to emerge too, right? Because you think, oh, well, I need to be this person, I need to be that person. But as you're taking these actions, you're growing as you're doing this. Every time you make the decision to trust yourself and take a step, growth. Every single time. And as you do that, you begin to unlock facets of yourself that have always been there, but maybe you just forgot about them, right? For whatever reason. And so it does bring you back to you remembering like, oh, okay, this is who I am, right? This is who I've always been. But there was just some other things kind of covering that part of me up.
So what exactly did that mean for you? Like when you say, this is who I've always been, but there may have been some other things really covering it up.
Yeah. Oh, man. What did that mean for me? It meant finding my voice. So when I was able to step into a space of trusting myself and taking the leap and launch my business and do my thing, I realized that at that moment I made that decision, I also found my voice because I stepped up and advocated for what it was that I wanted. You know what I mean? Like I could have in that moment, I could have allowed the fear of this huge investment completely take me out of the game and be like, oh my gosh, I cannot go home and tell my husband that I want to invest this amount of money and this and this and this. And how are we going to do it? And that, like, I could have let that voice kind of run the show, and I could have just enjoyed the event when I was there, and I could have walked away from it and went back to how things were. But in that moment, when I decided something for myself, is at the same moment that I found my voice, because I then had to, go home that evening and say, okay, so I got something to tell you. Here's what I've decided. Here's what I'm doing. And it wasn't about asking permission. It was literally just me and my power going, this is what I want for myself. This is so important to me. And in that moment, it's like I found my voice and I stepped up for something that really in my soul was something that I wanted. Yeah. I think anytime you trust yourself, you're stepping more closer into, your voice and what that looks like for you.
So when you think about like your journey and everything you've shared today, going from corporate to entrepreneur and all the lessons and learnings along the way and what you had to see about yourself, what you had to learn and trusting yourself and coming full circle with, remembering who you were. What do you think was the beautiful reflection that life offered you? If you had to sum it up into one thing or maybe two, like what was life trying to get you to see, trying to get you to remember, or trying to get you to reconnect with?
Yeah, I think the first thing that life was wanting me to recognize is that it was safe for me to trust myself, regardless of what anyone had ever told me, regardless of what the world said I was supposed to do, regardless of anything. Life was like, I want you to recognize that you can trust yourself. The other piece too, I feel like that moving through all this, but like the one piece that I did not mention was that, so that job, that career that I had in healthcare, they let me go. So like 2 months after starting my business, after launching my business and like being like this new little business person, they let me go. And so in that moment, of course, that was terrifying and that was shocking and it was all the things. But looking back on that, the reflection is that I am so much stronger than what I ever thought that I was, right? Because it was one of those moments that I now can look back on and say, okay, well, that happened and I made it through just fine. Sure, it was uncomfortable. There were some tears. There was some upset, but I made it through. So it showed me that I am a resilient woman, right? Resilient, and that I could trust myself. And also, the last piece that I'll say is that the reflection on this that life has taught me is that those nudges that we feel on the inside for something more, for something better, for something, whatever that is, that they're real. Like they're absolutely real. We can sometimes think, you may have this vision about where you see your life and you think, there's no way I could get there. Or that's not for me. I'm just thinking that because I watched this TV show the other night. Or I'm just thinking that because I see this person doing it. But if it comes through you and it feels good and it feels exciting, it's for you. So I realized that vision that I'd held in my mind for so long of being my own boss and not really knowing what that looked like, but just having this feeling that I wanted to be my own boss, that vision was for me. And I had to go through those different steps and those processes in order to allow that part of myself to come forth.
Yeah, we've been talking about, this as it relates to entrepreneurship. But like you said, like even for the career woman who is really ready for something else and ready to transition, whether she recognizes entrepreneurship or not, but she just knows and she's getting this feeling inside that this employee life is not it. She wants more and she doesn't even know what that is, but she's feeling something in the inside and she knows that she's sitting at work every day and she's not happy, she's unfulfilled and she's just in this place, but yet she feels like, maybe she's in survival mode. She feels like, she needs a job or, maybe she's experiencing some fear and she's afraid to even consider what could be outside of it or even to pursue it because of the fear. And you talked about like this process of really just recognizing that and having the awareness and the thoughts and things like that. And we've been specifically talking about like the whole theme of just really trusting yourself in that. So, what do you want to say to women, whether she's a career woman or whether she's an entrepreneur, maybe she's a new entrepreneur or moving through entrepreneurship. What do you want to say to them that could really support them and empower them for where they are with relationship to really coming to a place of really trusting themselves so that they can step into what's next for themselves?
That is so good. First of all, what I would say is that whatever that vision you're holding inside of your mind, you deserve to experience it. You deserve to experience it. And even if, like specifically speaking to the woman that maybe you're in a job or a career that you're just not happy with, acknowledging that you're not happy with that and opening yourself up to other possibilities, right? Like literally asking yourself, okay, well, what else is possible, right? Like that's how I got into healthcare, was thinking about, okay, well, what else could be possible? And that was a scary jump in the beginning because it was a huge step up from where I was. And that was really scary, but I want to be here and this is where I want to go. So then I'm going to do that. So it's knowing that you deserve the vision that you're holding inside of you. You deserve to experience it. And working through the fear is going to be important, right? Whatever fear is coming up, work through that. And what I mean by working through it is like get it out on paper, get it out of your mind, get it out of your body. Because anytime we can take fear and we can put it on in a journal or we can speak it out and release it, anytime we can do that, we take its power away. If you walk around and keep trying to hold it inside of you, it has power over you. So release it, process it, move through it, talk about it, journal about it, pray about it, get it out of your being so that the inspirations, the ideas, the steps forward, the moves forward will be able to then come to you. Yeah. And know that you have a choice. You get to choose. You absolutely, and I know there may be someone listening who's like, oh my gosh, but you have no idea what I'm going through right now. Like this feels so stressful. And I totally get that. But in any given, that's where our power lies. Your power lies in your ability to choose something different.
Yeah, that's so deep, recognizing that we always have a choice in everything, because I feel like so often we're actually told the opposite.
Right.
We're led to believe that, this is the only way or this is what's for us and this is what we have to do. So often like we seem like our choices are already given to us or it's already laid out in front of us and then we just have to walk it and go with it. So just recognizing the power in choice and that, you have a choice in any situation, any given situation, despite what may be in front of you, despite what other people may say, despite what you may even be telling yourself about it. Like you always have a choice in it.
Yes.
You always have a choice.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about your work now. We've talked a lot about your story, your background, and how this relates to, trusting yourself and this whole process that you've walked us through, which is such an inspiring, such a powerful journey from such an open and honest and vulnerable place of really just sharing like what that looked like in real time. This is what I faced. This is how I worked through it. And this is what came up. And this is how, it looked for me. So tell us more about your work and what it means to have soulful success by design.
Yes. So that is my brand, Soulful Success by Design. And so through walking through this journey, so I've been walking this journey of entrepreneurship now this will be my 5th year. And about 18 months ago, well, maybe even longer than that, I can't remember, I was introduced to a system called human design, which I absolutely fell in love with. And essentially, to keep it like short and sweet, what it is, it's a system that really shows you individually how your body processes different energies that we come in contact with, right? How do you process mental energy? How do you process emotional energy? How do you process stress energy? How do you process your intuitiveness, right? All of these different energies, like we're this vessel and this being walking around, but we're also in charge of how we navigate these different energies, right? So like we were just saying a few moments ago, we have a choice. This is where your choice comes into play, where you get to choose how you want this energy to move through you. And so with human design, it breaks it down and shows your unique like soul blueprint, how you are designed to show up and interact with the world, because we don't all do it the same. A message that we receive is that, like you said earlier, like, okay, this is the path. This is the path everyone should follow. If you take this path, then you're going to get to where you want to go. But we know that that's not the case, because everyone's path and how they get there is going to be different. And through my work with human design, it helps you understand what your path looks like, how you best make decisions. It helps you to recognize and turn back inwards and tap into your own personal authority and make decisions from that place instead of trying to make decisions from outside of you through what other people think you should do. So the work that I do now is really centered around that. And so it's helping women to get back to their truth, helping them decondition the beliefs, the thoughts, they might have been carrying with them for years. That's not allowing their full potential to be seen. And so I walk them through this now through the lens of human design and helping them understand, okay, well, Kendra, what does this look like for me? What do my strengths look like as it pertains to my energy and how I show up in the world? And where are my vulnerabilities? Because it's also important for us to know our vulnerabilities so that we can work with that and not become a victim of that, of our vulnerabilities. So that's what Soulful Success by Design is. It's understanding that you get to have success that is from the inside out, based on design, not by default. So.
That's so powerful. And I think it's such an essential facet, just myself being an entrepreneur. And like you said, we spend so much time getting the education, getting the qualifications and things like that. But that's an external focus. It's an external focus. And really, we're going to hear lots of different suggestions and advice and things and ways that we can do and try as we, try to be a great entrepreneur. But what I've learned also is that the most important thing is actually when you do begin that process of really shifting the focus internal and really learning about how you operate, by design and what works best for, like you said, your soul, what resonates with you. And when you can start to understand that, it helps you in trusting yourself more too. Yeah. And trusting yourself to know that, this is me inherently and this is what supports me and who I am at my core to the fullest.
So true. Yes. Because we all, like, one of the things that I deeply believe is that we have the answers that we are looking for. They're inside of us. They are always inside of us. The answers that we need, they're not out there in the world, right? We may need a coach or a mentor, someone to help kind of uncover that, to help us move through the process of getting there. But the answers are always inside of us. And so it is very much so an internal focus and, tapping into our own personal power, because we are all so very powerful. And when you learn how to tap into your own personal power and how to hold that personal power without allowing fear or doubt or what someone else says collapse that power, when you can hold it and it's like you really step into your sovereignty, And
that is the definition of really of personal power and really owning that and walking in that and embracing that. I love that. I love human design. You introduced me to my human design type, and I learned a lot about myself, which was surprising to see myself so clearly outlined on paper in front of me, and like for it to resonate so much with me in my life and where I was on my journey. And I love that you mentioned the importance of recognizing like that we all have the answers inside of us and that we know, and also the importance of letting others support us and assist us and guide us to that. And really get us to that place of having a new awareness or having a perspective that's really going to help us shift. It's going to help us shift faster than we could do on our own. And it's going to help us see things that maybe we may be blind to about ourselves. So with that said, please share with us some of your programs or what are you offering right now for women who may be listening to you like, that's me. I want to talk to her. I'm resonating so much with what she's saying. I can really relate to everything that she's mentioning. What programs and what are you offering right now for women who may be interested in working with you?
Well, I've got 3 different ways, really. So if there is someone who's interested in wanting to understand their human design and what that looks like, I do human design readings. And that's it's an hour to 60 to 90 minute, conversation of just looking at your unique blueprint, what that means for you. Like, what does it even mean to be, one of the different types? What does it mean as far as, my profile, like breaking that down? So I do offer that. I do readings. And then there's also the next way to work with me is I am going to be releasing a program here shortly. The doors aren't open yet, but it's called Pearls of Wisdom. Mm-hmm. And I'm so excited about this program because it's going to walk you through, it's going to have a human design focus, but the whole point of it too is deconditioning, right? Because within your conditioning, there is wisdom. Mm-hmm. There's wisdom there that wants to be brought to the surface. And when you can, again, clear the conditioning, you can really unearth like this wisdom that's going to help you navigate your life, either your career or your business. That is another way to work with me. And then, of course, I have one-on-one container. I've got space right now for 2 more one-on-one spaces. And that looks like it's 6 months of you and I working together one-to-one. We get to go deep. We get to step into more of the embodiment of what it is where you want to go. So all of these things, like, you can find me on social. I'm at Kendra C. Woods on Facebook. On Instagram, I'm at Soulful Success by Design. And you can feel free to email me at kendra@kendrakWoods.com. And that's K-A-Y spelled out, kendra@kendrakwoods.com. If any of those sound like something that you'd want to know more about, I'm an open door.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll be sure to put all of that in the show notes. And I like to end our conversation on helping our listeners to understand your why. And why you're in this work and what keeps you going, what keeps you motivated, what keeps you inspired, and what keeps you wanting to empower women in such a powerful way.
I love this because my why has shifted literally just recently. And my why is for me. My why is for me. I know typically you hear, well, my why is for my family or my daughters or my sons or whatever. Like, my why is about me fulfilling this purpose that I have in my heart to help women elevate their lives. And so when I get up every morning, I'm getting up for me. I'm getting up for the woman out there who's like, I just need someone to kind of walk me through this. Right. And of course, inevitably that flows into, of course, supporting my family and all the things like that. But first and foremost, my why is me. It's my purpose that I feel inside of me that nudges me like every morning to get up and show up,
That's so good and so deep. And you're right. It's different from what you may hear, but in relation to what we've been talking about, it makes perfect sense.
Right.
This journey of really coming back to your truth of who you really are, this journey of really finding your voice, finding out who you were at your core, and then, working through these practices and this process to get there. And now it's about you. It's about you first showing up so that you can do the work that you desire to do in the world.
Yes. Me first is what it's about. It's you first, me first, because through that space, we can support so many others in the way that we're meant to.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. This has been a lovely conversation. Thank you for the great insight that you provided. And thank you for sharing of yourself in such a beautiful way.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. I'd love to hear from you. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram at Catherine N. Johnson and on LinkedIn at Catherine N. Johnson. I'd love to hear your takeaways, your learnings, your lessons, and how the podcast is supporting you. If you're on Instagram, be sure to use the hashtag Beautiful Reflections Podcast and share with me what you're learning, how it's impacting you, how it's supporting your life. Be sure to leave a rating, a review, or a comment, and let us know what you think about the podcast. Also, share it with another woman in your life who could really use the inspiration and who could use the empowerment. Until next time.